Arundhati Subramaniam is an Indian English poet, Indian writing in English as we call it. I'm struck by the fact that today, as in many other earlier ages, writing cannot be a full-time profession. It doesn't give you your bread and butter, as they say, or your dal chawal, or your sambar annam, if you please, because Arundhati Subramaniam is a South Indian. What happens when you are into another profession, like maybe dancing, maybe music, maybe sports, whatever, and then you decide to write? What do you write about? Do you write about your experiences in your professional field? Or do you write about the world around you? Are you writing with your imagination? Or are you writing with your brain, with your logical, rational appearance, attitude to life around you? I find it difficult to answer that question with a simple yes or no, or to push people into slots. But the more I look around today in the 21st century, the more I read about writing, I find that there are very few people who earn enough through their writing. And that to me is a very, very interesting phenomenon, because here you have people with variegated experiences now taking to writing. Well, our poet for this episode is one such person, Arundhati Subramaniam. Arundhati Subramaniam, born 1973, so obviously very contemporary for us, is an Indian poet, an author, a dancer, deeply involved in spirituality. In fact, she writes about spiritual experiences too. She writes about our culture. She writes about the festivals of India. She is a Sahitya Academy winner. She has 13 books of poetry and prose. She heads a department of Indian classical dance. She has translated from Tamil and Gujarati into English, but she insists in many an interview that I've seen and heard that she will write only in the English language. And I love this aside of her. She says, why not English? English too is an Indian language. But well, that's another debate. Her voice seems to be lyrical, but questioning at the same time. An anthology of her poetry, of Bhakti poetry, is interestingly called Eating God. Another book of poems of hers is called When God is a Traveler. She belongs to the Poetry Circle of Bombay. And this particular poem, I believe, was published and produced for the 39th Poetry International Festival. So, the poem is all about her experience as a dancer, a critic, a spiritual questioner. Let's see what the poem is all about. For someone born in Chennai but living in Mumbai today, I think the local train is very much a part of everyday life. So the poem we have now is 546 Andheri Local. Remember, our trains are known also from where they set out, where they reach, but also by the time. And if you have stood at a station where a local train is to arrive, you always hear 546, 623, whatever it is. So this is a local train, 546 Andheri Local. Let me begin by reading the poem. In the women's compartment of a Bombay local, we seek no personal epiphanies. A word that we do associate with poetry and with music. Epiphany. What is that? That is a sudden realization. For somebody who is traveling every day in that crowded local Mumbai train, are we looking for any great nirvana, any realization? No, she says, in the women's compartment of a Bombay local, we seek no personal epiphanies. Why? Because we become one with the surroundings. In fact, as somebody pointed out humorously, in a local train, we don't even know whether it's my hand or my neighbor's hand. It is that crowded. In the mornings and the evenings, maybe. Like metal licked by relentless acetylene, we are welded. Dreams, disasters, germs, destinies, flesh and organza, odors and ovaries. Everything about the human body is there, merged into one. So like the relentless acetylene, that colorless gas, we totally become one. Do I have an identity of my own? She says, no. We are welded. What is welded? Dreams, desires, germs, destinies, flesh and organza, odors and ovaries. 1,000-limbed, million-tongued, multi-spoused Kali on wheels. The word Kali, the goddess Kali, right, brings many images to you. It could be one of Shakti. It could be one of violence. It could be one of power. It could be one of becoming one with everything around you. So she talks about the million-tongued, multi-spoused Kali on wheels. And then the journey has to come to an end. So when I descend, I could choose to dice carrots or a lover. I postpone the latter. A little frightening, a little scary. Am I going to cut into pieces? Remember, this could be the mental image. Or the word dice also has a meaning in slang, which is reject. Am I going to reject my reality? Can I do that? Is it possible? She says, I postpone the latter. Certainly about female identity, certainly about the importance of space. We are constantly talking about the lack of space, but there is the need to navigate the space wherever we are, even in the crowded 546 Andheri Local. This poem, born out of everyday experience, I think insists on, emphasizes on the shared experience or the collective identity. And I realize the poet does not go into the aesthetics of poetry. We do not find the usual kinds of figures of speech that we talk about, that we look for. Because she's so steeped in her experience of a local train, which says so much about city life, so much about the crowded lack of space that we all face in urban settings all over the world. And therefore, there is a certain anonymity, I think, which comes because is every woman like every other woman? Is it that lack of identity that is troubling her? Is it the fact that we all merge into becoming one? Only because we have no other choice. So when I read this poem, I think I'm looking more at the themes. I'm looking at the pain, should I call it? Should I call it the worry that probably troubles each and every woman, certainly, or maybe each and every human being in our urban jungles today? An important exercise that I often give my students is to give them a passage. It could be prose or poetry, and ask them to guess whether it was written by a man or a woman. There are a lot of feminist critics who would have us believe that there is a language which is specific to women writers. Our choice of words are certainly influenced by our own experience, the female experience. And then you might argue, but what about male language? I think if we are always thinking of the male as the center, then we are talking about the other. But I would like to look at this poem and poems by many other women writers and say they have a voice, they have an identity, or they are searching for an identity. I think that is what made this poem so special to me, made this poem a poem that should be read, not just by every woman, but by everyone who likes to read poetry, literature, as something being a mirror to the age in which the writer lives and writes.